All right, Diddy's trial has finally come to an end. Let's check it out, man. Let's check it out, bro. This is about to be interesting.
A lot to unpack here, Pedro.
Wow, she looked like Young Miami.
First of all, when we found out there was a verdict, obviously there's that 20-minute window where there's lots of tension. So you saw all of the attorneys file in. Every single attorney for Sean Combs could not sit down. They were standing in the well with their arms folded. Mark Agnifilo was pacing back and forth. The family returned to the courtroom. Sean Combs returned to the courtroom. He said a few words to his family saying it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. Now this is after he led a moment of prayer earlier this morning when they were in court. So now the jury is seated in the courtroom.
Wait, they let Diddy lead prayer in the courtroom for everybody? That, like, do they usually let that happen? Like, does the criminal, or not the criminal, the person that's on trial, lead prayer?
Combs, and actually let me just go back, because when we were waiting for the verdict to come in, Sean Combs was sitting in his chair reading Psalms 18. It was a printout of Psalms 18. So again, he had that moment of quiet, that moment of meditation. He was still waiting to find out. Obviously, there were four verdicts reached yesterday, and then the other one this morning. So the jury is seated.
Psalms 18. What is that? What verse is that? Psalms 18. For the directive of music of David, the servant of the Lord, he sang to the Lord the words of his song when the Lord delivered him from the hands of all his enemies and the hand of Saul.
They say they have found
I love you, Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, my deliverer.
Verdict. And so as they were reading down the counts, again, Sean Combs was not looking forward. He was kind of in that state, that stillness, that meditative state that we've seen him. And the first count, not guilty, he goes, yeah, that was the first thing. You could hear a little bit of cheering from the family and the crowd. People were saying yes. The second count, he just kind of fist pumped. Now, the third count, the sex trafficking, the Mann Act, the interstate prostitution.
Okay, racketeering conspiracy, not guilty. Sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, not guilty. Transportation to engage in prostitution, guilty. Max sentence 10 years in prison. Sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, not guilty. Well, why did they have that twice? I thought you can't be tried for the same thing twice. Transportation to engage in prostitution, Jane, guilty. Oh, so it's two different people, I guess. All right.
When that guilty verdict
Ventura, which is Cassie, and I don't know who Jane is,
was read, he was kind of holding his head like this, and you could see he was shocked. He did not see that one coming. You could see kind of like that kinetic shock run through his body. But then when they went through the next count, the sex trafficking for Jane, not guilty. Then the prostitution for Jane, he and Tinny Garagos, they kind of had like a moment. They were sitting next to each other. They grabbed hands. They were holding hands, kind of like, like this, pumping each other's fists, like congratulations. All of the attorneys, all of his defense attorneys who were pacing around, nervous before the verdict was read, you could see smiles on the face of Brian Steele, smiles on the...
Nah, Brian Steele, bro out here beating Ricos left to right. Hey, Dirk, if you want to get out of jail, you know who to call, bro. Brian's still putting up goddamn prime Kobe numbers.
The face of Mark Agnifilo. Then Combs began to turn around and speak to his family, saying, I'm coming home, it's going to be okay. And then he actually started thanking the jury. He started nodding his head, thanking the jury, that same eye contact that we'd seen at the beginning of the trial that he'd been admonished for. He did that again. Now, but it's not clear if any of the jurors looked back and acknowledged him. I didn't really see anyone look back to acknowledge him thanking the jury, but he was just thanking the jury. And he would continuously look back at his family. At one point, his son Justin, when the jury left the room, he stood up. He grabbed a book in his hand. He held the hand up like, thank you, thank you. Lots of prayers from the Combs family. Now, here's the issue. This is, again, of course, not over because his attorney, Mark Agnifilo, is asking that he be released on bail in light of being acquitted of the most serious charges. So then again, you see the attorneys going tit for tat. Mark Agnifilo says in light of these charges, he's been acquitted. He deserves to be returned home to his family. He deserves to go back to Two-Star Island in Florida. That's what Maureen...
Okay, so he's found guilty on 2 counts, but he just goes to jail? I mean, he just goes home, just go free? I don't, like, what the heck? He should at least, like, serve for, like, a little bit more time, you know? Or something. I don't know. I don't know, bro. He was found guilty on some counts.
Comey stood up and said, listen, Your Honor.
But I guess it's looking like he's not going to be in there for too long. If he isn't free.
Serious counts. He was acquitted. However, you heard extensive testimony about the threats. You heard extensive testimony about the violence, and those are still underlying factors. Now, this is when you saw Tini Geragos was livid at this argument, especially in light of the verdict that had just been read. She leaned over to Mark Agnifilo, and she was just like fierce in her face, like, you know, she was mad, like pointing at Maureen Comey, speaking to Mark Agnifilo, just really upset that it appeared that the prosecution was still going hard to keep Sean Combs detained. Now, when the jury left and we were all dismissed from the court, that was another powerful moment. Sean Combs dropped to his knees. He dropped to his knees where his chair is and just bowed his head and just prayed. It was about 2 or 3 minutes. He just dropped, and you could just tell he was relieved. He was thankful. You know, you just can't really emphasize it enough.
Do the freak off stop now, or do, like, if you Diddy, do you keep him going? I'm keeping him going. Fuck it, right? they couldn't get you the first time.
You know, a person to do after conviction. His family stood up in that moment, kind of acknowledging that he was on his knees.
You gotta keep the freak offs going. You gotta keep the freak offs going. You got to.
And this, now remind you, it's also an armchair, so it's a pretty robust chair, and he's just on his knees praying in the chair. When he stood up, the family cheered, lots of cheers. It was kind of like the end of the Super Bowl for this family and for this legal team. They were cheering. Tini Geragos, Mark Agnifilo, group hugs. You can see Mark
his family right now is coming out of the courtroom behind you. We've just seen his mother leading.
Janice Combs walking out the door.
Leading the group out, but we also saw Christian Combs, Justin Combs, as well as his daughters leaving the courtroom.
His
right
6 children coming
our...
out. You know, you have to wonder. This is a very different picture of Sean Combs than we have seen, certainly for the last 2 months, played out in court. Darla, I wanted to ask you, Darla, do you...
Bro, what is Brian Steele doing? Like, how good of a lawyer? He got to be the greatest lawyer of all time. He trying to make a resume for himself, and I love it, bro. Like, he said, I'm coming into this game. I don't know how long he's been in this game, but he said, I'm finna make a name for myself. I'm finna make a name for myself. I'm finna put in this work. I'm finna put in this pain. Everybody's gonna know the name Brian Steele. Everybody. When you know Brian Steele is on your side, shit is gonna get done. Hey, man, I know if I ever get into some shit and I got some money, I know who I'm calling. Shit. Shit.
Do you see contrition in Sean Combs today, since you're talking about so much faith and
or was
holding
it
up a
just
Bible?
relief?
And was it relief? Was it what? Do you see a changed man? I mean, I know it's your opinion, but this is certainly a different Sean Combs than was portrayed in court day after day.
Get registered now. Bro, I get the most random ads.
First of all, let me tell you, I was actually just in the elevator and in the hallway with the family, the children, as they left. And obviously, we've been in trial together. And as they were walking out of court, you could see them really happy about the verdict as they were waiting for the vehicle. So I was just in there with them before we came out. And the family, obviously, very pleased.
Is that Kendrick Lamar?
And
Bro, that looks nothing like Kendrick Lamar. What the hell?
about the verdict.
It's that hat.
As they were waiting for the vehicle. So
And
I
the
was
beard.
just in there with them before we came out.
And he looks short. That look like Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
and the family.
I just saw a blue baseball hat and I thought it was Kendrick, bro. That looks like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. If you know, you know. He's a running back in the NFL.
Obviously very pleased. You know, Sean Combs has maintained he was innocent the entire time, so I don't believe contrition is the word, but you definitely see humility. You see a man of faith. You see his family, the level of family support. There's definitely a tale of two Sean Combs, but I don't think that's new, right? I think at the beginning of the trial, they said this is a man who's dynamic, he inspires people, he's a music mogul, he's touched every life of the people who have worked for him, but there is also a second side of Sean Combs that you don't know, and that was literally in the prosecution's opening arguments. So to say that, you know, I wouldn't speak on contrition. I don't think that's the word, but you see a man who has been praying, and you see a man who feels like his prayers have been answered.
Job of painting every second from when the jury walked in the room to when those charges were read to when they're discussing about maybe possibly releasing Sean Combs from jail today. So there, you were at the point right there where the lawyers were at each other, kind of looking at each other in that argument. Did you feel like one side had a stronger argument standing there?
Again, not a legal analyst, but Judge Arun Subramanian asked Mark Agnifilo, what does that look like? Does he walk out of court today? And he said, in the world, according to Mark Agnifilo, actually, yes. And we would, you know, obviously there's some paperwork that needs to be filed. We need to go through some legal proceedings, but absolutely, yes, this is a day where we think he should walk out of this courtroom. And so then Judge Subramanian asked Combs, I can imagine, Mr. Combs, you don't want to go back to NBC. And he started shaking his head no like that, and he's been known to kind of communicate with the judge like that. There was a little bit of laughter in the courtroom when he was just like, no way, I don't want to go back into the courtroom. I also want to share this with you. I was in the elevator with Mark Agnifilo after the legal wrangling back and forth, because what is now going to happen, both sides have to submit a letter to the court why they believe he deserves to be released on bail today, why they believe he should still be held in custody. Mark Agnifilo is asking for a $1 million bond with 3 family members who are in court today. So they have resolved to get it done today. So court is still not dismissed. We still have to return to the court at 1 o'clock this afternoon to determine or to learn whether or not this bail application will be approved or not. And if he does, in fact, walk out of the front doors today. But I was in the elevator with Mark Agnifilo. He was asked by one reporter, how do you feel? He says, I've never had this feeling in 34 years. And so then I asked him, well, what does that feeling feel like? And he kind of thought about it, and he says, I'm relieved that I'm not miserable. And so...
Okay. So Diddy's free. Let me know how you feel about this in the comments section. Like, is this deserved? Does he, like, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I'm out.